get started? My physically robust friend? Your glutes are going to be sore. That was a questionable statement to start. So what we're going to be looking at is a little bit more of a dynamic look on the headquarters passing. I know obviously, like, depending on which gym you've been at, most of like the traditional schools love headquarters to death. All the gi schools love headquarters to death, but they use it in a very tactical way, I'll say, without saying stalling. Resilience, sorry, everybody. But this new methodology of how we're utilizing it is very similar as the split squat system, and you're seeing a lot of the new wave guys use and a lot of the guys at the top level use. And so hopefully we can put those two chains together and show you some dynamics between headquarters passing and split squat passing that's really, really super effective. And then we're going to look at chaining it with some body locking and then also into the mount position where we've got a couple of really good high level submissions and an arm bar that I guarantee you haven't seen before. So that's going to be really nice at the very end. I'll give you guys the outlay before we get there. So very beginning to start with headquarters, I always want to step nice and deep so that I can actually get his knee up towards his chest on this far side. Josh is going to have an advantage against me the further behind my foot my knee is. So if I'm standing like this, he's going to have the advantage. If I'm standing like this, I'm going to have the advantage. And I want to be actively driving all of my weight over to his far shoulder. If I find that he gets a good grip on my ankle and he prevents me from moving my knee too far forwards, a nice little detail is start to heel and toe walk your way all the way out to the side. You'll either dismantle the grip completely or you'll reduce its effectiveness so much so that if he tries to off balance me from here, I'm in such a nice stable riding position, and this is going to be the foundation of every technique that we look at after this in terms of the passing. And so what I really want to do is start to compress his heel to his butt all the way down here. When we're trying to generate force with our muscles, usually all the way down the very end of the lever is not a good place to start to produce force. You actually, if he's the bottom player, he wants to be somewhere here. If I try and push this down from here, it's quite difficult. If he tries to extend me away from here, it's extremely difficult. So if we're thinking about just making this gap as small as possible, that's always a good first place to start. You'll find that when you begin to do this, if you're just leaning on top of them and you don't close that gap effectively, he can start to kick me off to the side. Exactly, I'm gonna have to step. He's gonna start to gain an advantage, whether he brings me back to this side, off balances me. Yeah, exactly right. So the two things that I'm looking for is trying to get this knee all the way over here as much as possible. If he's preventing me from doing that with a really strong grip, I'm gonna start to use a heel toe walking method to drive my knee all the way out and down to crush his knee down to the mat. If he tries to put this leg on the inside, it's gonna be extremely difficult based on where my knee position is. Now I'm thinking about crushing this heel towards his ass, and this is where I start to play from here. From the upper body perspective, what we're always looking at, use these sparingly because this is like a bit of a dick move in training, but you can always start to use throat posts if they start to send you overhead or try and off balance you. But my preference is always going to be in the armpits, either side, or if I can manage to gain a contact to his wrist, if he's framing up on me on his chest or something like that, I'm always going to pin his wrist down towards his chest. So now when he tries to move me around at the lower body, I'm in such a dominant and strong position. I don't feel like I'm getting off balance to a significant degree to where I have to change my position, and then we can start to get to work from here. So what I want you guys to do to start, get your opponent in a seated position. You're gonna step in and across, trying to move this knee as far away from his center line as possible. And then you're gonna play between having your knee behind your foot and getting him to off balance you. So if he takes his knee up towards my knee, yeah, he can start to send me backwards, and it's a bit of a game from here. Play the same game with your knee started to protrude forwards. Now try and off balance me. It's much more difficult, and I can start to surf this out a little bit. If he does a good job at stopping my knee, getting to over the top of his knee, I'm just gonna use a heel walk motion to get my knee all the way across. Notice at the same time, I always compress his heel to his butt, and I'm actively driving my weight towards his top shoulder. Now, if he wants to frame up on me, he can always do so, but I'm gonna go through a system of destroying those frames and either planting in my armpits, in the armpits, or in the throat. Let's give that a go. We'll begin from there. So what you would have come to the realization is that it's extremely insisting on sitting over there.
I don't know.
Come.
Okay. I don't want to get in shot.
Do we have like a tape of X that we can mark his butt on the floor or something? So what you guys will start to realize is this is a really nice foundation for a lot of different movements. And now, I was talking to Miles just before, really what I'm focused on and fixated on here is the position of this knee. Once I've dealt with this side, and once I've knee walked my way over there, I don't really have to worry about this. If my shin's straight up and down, he can always bring this to the inside and then start to play all different types of guards and have inside position. But once I've negated that, my attention truthfully isn't really over that side. It's always on here. So it's gonna be the distance between his knee and his chest. It's also gonna be whether it's pointing to my bottom hip or whether it's pointing to my top hip. We'll look at the bottom hip for now. If he's pointing towards the bottom hip, most people will try and knee cut through this, and it's not going to work because when I try and go across, his hip is actually, his knee, sorry, is preventing me from getting over to the other side. So the knee cut is something we'll look at next with the open hip position, but this is the bottom hip or the closed hip position. When we're going this way, we always want to go with whatever they're doing. So if he's open this way, I'll go this way. If he's closed this way, I'll simply go this way. I'm starting to externally rotate my knee to the outside of his knee and starting to plant that down towards the mat. Once I've driven my right hip, it's essentially the same thing as talking about when someone tries to defend Uchimata, when you hip check the near side of their hip and that you prevent them from throwing you over. All I want to think about is driving my right hip underneath his hamstring here. There's a pretty decent amount of weight, and I don't want to crash the shoulders and the chest just yet. I actually want to like banana my body, so my hips are extremely heavy. If he tries to off balance me from here, his knees are completely glued together. He's just not going to have a really good time at that. Now I can start to extract my foot from his grip because it's going to be quite weak. And then actually what I'm going to do, instead of going all the way round, this is where his guard is, right? So I can start to go behind him. But what I prefer to do these days, and this will end up in the mount position eventually, I'm actually starting to come through and split his legs in between. Now this has really good application for things like MMA as well, where people just want to wrestle up and get off their back. And for jiu-jitsu, it's actually becoming more prominent, especially in no-gi, where people don't want to sit into guard. If he tries to wrestle up from here, I've pinned his hips with my knee, so that if he just tries to get up, he's like, it's physically impossible because I've wedged in between his legs here. Once I've got this position, I'm always reaching for either near side control of the head or far side control of the head, depending on how he reacts. If he gives me a lot of resistance with inside bicep frames, I just go over the top. If he gives me no resistance and he's worried about my knee, I come in front, I drop my shoulder and my elbow so they run across the mat. I reach into his armpit with my middle finger, and then I pull his bottom shoulder towards me. Once I pull his bottom shoulder towards me, all of my directionality starts to go towards this direction. So I just lean my torso and my body weight, sorry for your neck.
No, you're good.
Just lean my torso and my body weight this direction. And once his right knee comes off the floor, I can start to extract my leg that's started in the middle of his legs and start to come around into the mount position. So it's a really effective way of just crushing his legs together, stopping him from using ashigaramis, wrestle ups, using like scrambles and dynamic movements so that I can cleanly move in and around his guard without actually having to make any mistakes. So we get into our original headquarters position. We've got a nice strong base here. He starts to put his knee down towards the bottom hip, and so I'm going to take him that same direction that he wants to go. The most important part about this is that you guys don't lead with your foot, because if I lead with my foot, look at my center of base. If he just gives me a little kick here, I'll have to come over. If I lead with my knee and do the same thing and drive my hips in, and now I get a right hip check, if he tries to kick me over, I don't care how strong he is, he's not going to move me from here. I don't even have to use my hands. Once I get to this position, I'll free my foot and I'll sag down on top of his leg. If he tries to open his legs at this stage, it's not going to happen. So now I can start to thread my right knee in between his legs. I want my right knee to touch his bottom hip at this stage, not down the rest of his knee here, because it might be easy for him to just shift that knee back on the inside. If I go all the way towards the hip, there's not a chance in hell he brings that bottom leg inside. So now, depending on how he starts to defend, if he goes inside bicep ties, I'll always go here and crush it back. They'll usually give a pretty big response trying to extend themselves, and then I can start to drop my shoulder, get my arm pin into the middle here, pull him all the way towards me, and then lay over the top. If you guys haven't been doing these, I definitely recommend it. If you leave him out in this direction and just put weight here, comparative to this, you can ask Josh what the difference is in a minute. This one's way worse, right?
Yeah.
You pull them towards you, start to lean over the top, and now I can seamlessly bring my left knee to where my right knee was. My right knee comes around the corner, and I'm in a really good top pin position called mount. Let's give that a go. This one's a fun one, a little bit less technical than that whole sequence. Used to think it was bullshit, and then I watched Kyan Duarte use it 7 times at ADCC and passed a bunch of really fucking good guys. And so super viable, super usable. This is going to be the knee position in headquarters where they've got their knee straight up the middle. So we just looked at their knee pointing towards the bottom hip, but we're going to smash his knees and go that direction. When his knee's pointed up towards the middle, typically what he's trying to do is trying to send me overhead, or he's going to go into like a high reverse guard or reverse guard situation. So he's a bit more of a leg locker type of guy. And you will get this big response the more that you camp out here and just continually fuck with their frames. Their only real method, if they realize they can't send you this direction, is to start to either send you this direction, which is what I want, we'll look at that next, or he's going to try and extend me away. When he tries to extend me away, I'm going to get on the sides of both of the insides of my feet where my big toe and my heel are connected to the floor. I'm going to pinch my knees together, and I'm going to utilize this hand from the outside. I prefer to always keep this pinned, and no matter what, because otherwise if I don't, if I come up to here and knee hike him through, he can always bring this to the inside and then go into other ashiguramis. So it's a good detail to keep this pinned to the floor completely. As he extends me away, it's a bit of a timing thing, but you'll get a feel for it after we do a couple of reps. He extends away, I clamp through and throw his knee between my legs in an L-shaped position going towards my left. So I go in this direction and then towards here. Then my knee that will be covering that knee will come forwards in the opposing L position. Now if he tries to bring his knee through the middle, he'll run into all of my hamstring and all of my glute, and I can start to crash the upper body. At this stage, he's going to give me a big frame response, whether it's a cross frame or a straight frame. If it's straight frames like this, I'm going to use my chest to circle them out of the way. If it's a cross frame, this is the end of your knowledge, isn't it?
Yeah, that is it.
If he cross frames me like this, I'm going to go inside and get my elbow to the inside, claiming an underhook on the way. If he traps my leg in 3/4 mount, I'm really not too worried about this, especially if it's on the underhook side, because for him to perform a knee elbow escape, he needs this elbow. I'm really not worried about that whatsoever. If he starts to roll up towards this side to try and get that elbow back, that's actually where I'm going to press the accelerator with my left foot and start to peel it through the middle of his gut. You guys will be surprised at how often this can happen. Most people think that them clamping down on this leg is the death of you and you're gonna have to stay here forever. If they do give you a big response, you're not really losing anything by trying to shuck it through at this stage. If they do a good job at clamping down, we're just gonna take our head over his head, reach up, pummel our butterfly hook in, and then separate our feet back down towards mount. So this one's really fun. You'll definitely hit it on a bunch of training partners that weren't here today because they're not aware of it, so enjoy that. We get into our original riding position. He tries to send me over this direction, but I give him a good response with my hips. Then he starts to go, okay, maybe I'll extend him overhead. When he extends me overhead, I take the weight out of his extension. I slap this knee between the legs and send it down towards my bottom hip as I'm posting in his knee so that he can't bring in a K-guard style of attack. Then once I do that, I bring my knee left around the corner so that I'm pinching my knees together. If he gives me a good cross frame like this, I can always go to the side and disengage that. If he gives me double frames, I'm always looking to go inside those frames as I start to collapse my body weight down. I'd be very surprised if he could hold me for any meaningful duration as I just lean my body weight here, especially when I start to move. His frames will get taken away immediately. Then I can start to claim crossface underhooks. If he's not doing a good job at holding onto my leg, I'll press the accelerator down and I'll shuck my knee upwards towards his armpit. If he is doing a good job, I'll just continue with my crossface underhook over the top of his head, put my forehead on the mat for base, and then extract with my butterfly hook. Let's give that a go. This will be the third part of the little 3-part system based on where we're looking at where his knee position is. I taught this yesterday in the wrestling. I find that compartmentalizing things into like big chunks, like step 1, step 2, step 3, or reaction 1, reaction 2, reaction 3, hopefully instills a little bit easier to learn information for you guys. So if we come in here and he makes the adjustment, he's already done the knee to the side. I've already knee hiked him a couple of times. This time he's going to start to open his knee. There's 2 options from here. I lied. It's not a 3-part system, it's a 4-part system. If I can get my hand to place over the top of his head and my elbow and my armpit over this knee, he's made a big fucking mistake because I'm about to body lock him and mount him. If he's like disciplined with his guard play, some of the girls were saying they find difficulty because they're always like knees glued to their chest. This isn't always an obvious reaction sometimes, but if I give him a bit of push forward and then I see if this is available, I will always take it, absolutely. And when we get to this position, I'm not thinking about crashing the head, I'm thinking about sagging down to the hips again, every single time. Once I'm here, all I want to focus on is both of my armpits being over the top of his hips at this stage. Now, don't freak out because you don't have your hands locked in a body lock at this stage. It's actually quite easy just to snake these hands under and start to move him out to the side. Sorry if this is going to hurt.
You're right.
And then once I'm in here, in this position, notice how I'm in the exact same spot as the original headquarters passing, except my knees are both now on the floor. I'm crushing his heel to his ass on his left leg, and my left knee and elbow are connected, pinning his right knee down to the floor. So if he tries to move me around from here, I'm very low and I'm very centered down towards his hips, and I'm just inching forwards to get my body lock grip connected, whether I go 10 finger, whether I go wrist to wrist, whether I go palm to palm, all of them are just as good as each other. And now I can start to turn my left knee all the way down to the floor. I'm constantly, again, these systems are very matched. I'm constantly fixating on not letting him turn their shoulder up towards me and face me. So I'm continuing to put my weight over that far shoulder. This does two things. It keeps his shoulders pinned to the mat, and it also squishes his butterfly hook to a non-usable degree. If I make the mistake of not putting all my weight over his top shoulder and I allow him to turn towards me and face me, one swift kick and I fall over. Because I'm gripped up underneath his body, I don't have an ability to post. If I do want to undo my grip, I can post, but now I've reset the position. He brings his knee back in, and now we're back in this fight. So we've essentially lost most of our progress. Not the end of the world, we're still in a dominant headquarters position, but I prefer you guys make those adjustments over the far side of the body so that you don't have to keep resetting. So again, his knee's pointed up to outside towards my top hip. If I can, I will always make an effort to start to bring my armpit over the top of his knee, sag my body weight back down, and I'm gonna shuffle my hands underneath him until I can link them together. As soon as I've linked my hands together, my body weight comes over, I'll open my hands for you.
Yeah.
I'll come over this far side, I'm squishing his heel towards his ass, and I've got my head over his far shoulder. If he tries to turn in now, if he tries to off balance me, it's extremely difficult. All my weight is in perfect position, and now I can start a process of starting to hip switch up and over the top here. I'm going to drag his right knee, down towards the floor as I take my heel and kick towards my own ass, landing down as I slap my right hip into his near side hip. Now I'm in a really good top pinning position. This time we didn't get to mount, but we have to have a couple of options. The second option from the open knee position, when he opens his knee up towards my top hip, is me simply taking my outside hand, punching in between the space of his armpit and his lat, and then I'm going to start to knee cut. When people knee cut incorrectly, they start to go too far over the shoulder and they start to go hunting the head too far. If I do that, even if I do get an underhook, I end up somewhere out here and I'm not pinning his hips correctly. He can start to wrestle up and he can start to make the adjustments turning in towards me and face me. The thing that I like to do that I got shown by Jason Rao is that instead of going up over this direction, I'm going to go 90 degrees this time. So I collapse my hips directly over. You'll notice where all my body weight situates. My ass and my spine is preventing his top leg from coming in and being usable whatsoever. And I'm just laying over the top of this bottom leg here. Once I get to this position, I've already got my underhook. If he blocks me with the bicep tie, I simply just go inside using my thumb, crashing cross-face underhook. And now from here, this pummel is even easier than the 3/4 mount. If he grips up as tight as he can, I simply use my right leg to find the gap to separate from my heel. And this one's tricky. If you want to go to side control, you just go down to the bottom leg and extract. If you want to go to mount, you pummel your second butterfly hook in, you raise your hips, forehead on the floor, separate your knees, and we end up back in the mount position. So that one you actually get both options, which is really nice. So, when I'm in this position, if I see that he's being ill-disciplined by pointing his knee too far into my top shoulder, I'll just simply bring my elbow over the top, sink all of my weight back and down, making sure that I'm crushing his heel towards his ass, and then I'm going to start to shift underneath him, locking my hands in any format that I can. I'll leave them open for Josh because it hurts your spine. Then I'm gonna not crash the far shoulder, but I'm gonna keep my body weight and my torso pointed towards his far shoulder. If he tries to turn in here, if he tries to use his butterfly hook, it's extremely difficult and he'll burn a lot of energy from this position. Now, when I want to hip switch off, I take my left knee down, I kick straight backwards so I come immediately off his hook. He can extend that as much as he wants. He won't be able to keep contact with me. And then my right hip comes down to the mat, gluing to his near side hip. If he tries to re-guard from here, tries to turn into me, I just stay over this far shoulder, keep my hands connected, and I'm in a really good top pin. If he's being disciplined with his knee position, in terms of going to my top hip, but not keeping it towards my shoulder, he's keeping it towards his chest, he's doing a good job. I still have the ability to knee cut through this gap because he's pointed towards my top hip. So I'm gonna punch this space, my fist goes in between his tricep and his lat, and I cut 90 degrees straight across. Once I'm in this position, notice how I don't go up, I don't hunt the head, I don't give him an ability to off balance me. Everything's glued down back nice and tight, and my heels are my own ass at this stage. If he gives me a bicep tie to stop me from cross facing, I come through the inside with my thumb, connect my hands, start to crash the far shoulder. Once he gives me a big response to hold onto this leg, I simply, with my outside leg, free my heel. If I want to go to side control, I take my left foot out. If I want to go to mount, I pummel my butterfly hook in for the second time, rise, open my knees, start to turn his hips towards the ceiling, and then I land in mount. Let's give that a go. I get one last. Okay, so we're in the mount position. I make an effort to do that whenever I'm demonstrating mount stuff. So we've landed here with our underhook, depending on how we've got there. So obviously the knee cut gives us the underhook. The crashing of the chest to chest through the body lock gives us nice leverage for underhooks. Generally, I recommend that you guys don't go to mount without underhooks. Everybody's been in this position, he glues his elbows to his ribs, it's really annoying to deal with. If at any time you do have to make a decision that you're just not getting through these, you can always dismount, create another angle, get underneath the arm, and then travel back into mount. You should be pretty confident at doing that at this stage. So that's not it's an idea called backtracking. And it's always a really good idea to go back to gain an advantage you didn't have and then end up in a much more superior position. So the easiest submission from here, and by far the best, highest percentage, is always going to be the arm triangle or the katagatame. And once we land here with our underhook, my whole thing is trying to get his elbow above 90 degrees where his shoulder is. If he's below 90 degrees, it's going to be really difficult for me to lift. Not to worry, we've got methods on how to deal with that. We're going to start to spider walk our fingers up across the mat and then extend our elbow, but I want you to extend your elbow towards his face. Reason being is that sometimes when you teach this, people extend their elbow outwards and now his elbow can come back to the inside and I end up losing it. So if I extend it towards his face, if he tries to bring his elbow back down to the inside, my arm is in the way. Then I can start to finger walk and create more progress. Once I've got his elbow above the line of 90 degrees towards probably like 180, I'm showing the maths here, it's not very good. But once you get it up to here, it should be pretty easy just to start to bring it all the way the rest of the way. The second biggest challenge you're gonna have is trying to get your head over this side of the elbow. They're always gonna be pulling their elbow back and down, it's quite annoying. The way that we do that is actually by switching our original crossface hand for our secondary one and then cupping this far side of the trap here so that I can use my chest and my torso to start to send his elbow off this direction. If you really want to be a massive piece of shit, there's a sneaky little wrist lock here that if you just glue their hand into the mat, do it against your gym rival, but not against the nice people in your gym because they won't want to roll with you anymore. But anyway, you're going to start to use your chest in a 45-degree fashion. Again, similar thing with the arm and not putting ourselves out of position. If I try and go 90 degrees, I actually alleviate the pressure and Josh can now bring his elbow and circle it in underneath, not like that. He can circle it in underneath and then pop out that far side. So it's really important when you're doing this to take it in a 45-degree angle using my left pec in this instance, or the same pec that will be with the hand that's underneath the head. Once I'm satisfied with the elbow going past his skull, I can start to drop my head on the other side of his elbow. So when he tries to bring that back, my neck is gonna be in the way. Once I'm here, I can start to thread my other arm in through underneath. And this is actually the biggest issue that most people have with this, is that they start to come underneath here and they think that it's squeezing their bicep as hard as humanly possible. Squeezing your bicep as hard as humanly possible is A, inefficient, and B, doesn't create a good grasp on the side of the artery to get the finish properly. So if I'm squeezing, what you'll get as a review of your technique, you'll get 1 star. You'll actually start to get people telling you they feel a pain in the back of their neck, that they're not getting strangled. So when you thread this through, don't put any tension into this arm whatsoever. And theoretically, you should be able to finish this one-handed. I won't show you guys that, but that's the idea. I want this to be as loose as possible. If I feel like my elbow, or my bicep rather, isn't connected to his neck to a significant degree, I can always slam my hand down into the mat as I'm shoving my elbow this direction. And notice how I'm pushing his shoulder into the near side of his neck with my secondary arm. The reason I'm doing that is going to replace my head in that position in a moment as I start to bring my head down towards the floor. Once I'm here, I keep my strangle hand palm down. I go my secondary hand palm to palm, and I drive my elbow not towards my ribs, because if he gives me a big bridge, I'll start to fall over. If I go 90 degrees with my elbow, it doesn't matter how big of a bridge he gives me over his right shoulder, my elbow will perform enough of a frame to stop me from falling over. From here, all I start to do now, I don't dismount completely. I keep my right knee up and over the top of his torso. As I sink my weight down in towards his shoulder and his chest, and then I move my head towards his ear as I slowly start to use my chest and my shoulder into his near side. Now, my Yelp review. Did you feel any pain in the back of your neck? No. Did you feel any squeezing? Except your butthole, maybe?
Yeah, butthole, yeah.
So there's no squeezing in this technique, it's just leverage, force, and mechanics. So when we land with our underhook, we're trying to get his elbow above this 90 degrees. We're spider walking our hands upwards and then using our elbow to ratchet his arm up, keeping our progress the entire time. Then I'm gonna glue my elbow down and then continue to go upwards. Once I get to this position, he's always going, just doing the steps for me. Once I get to this position, they're gonna try and keep their elbow over the near side of the head. And this is a very common reaction. I'm simply gonna switch my hands that go underneath the head and grip the far side of the trap, taking my torso 45 degrees up over the edge. Notice that I'm not going 90 degrees because it gives him space to bring his elbow back down on the inside. Yep, that's exactly right. Once I'm satisfied with the elbow going across the far side of the head, I take my chin and I cover with the near side of my neck. Then I can snake my loose arm like a loose rope inside and touch the base of the side of his neck here. If I don't feel like I've made the adjustment correctly, I can keep wedging that forwards by slamming the mat with my fist. Then I'm going to use my opposite hand to roll him up into the strangle even more. I go palm down on my strangle side, palm up on the other side, 90 degrees with the elbow. As I start to shift my body weight down underneath his chin here, and I'm just going to lean and get my ear towards his ear as my forehead slowly starts to come towards the mat. Let's give that a go. So when we get into these positions, we're setting up our katagatame. One of the most common reactions is that they give us a cross hip frame. And they're trying to stop us progressing up the body. It's actually really good to start to set up mounted triangles. So what we're going to do is we're going to make that initial switch again, except we're not going to fixate on taking this across the body. We're going to fixate on connecting our left knee and our left elbow as we make light work of our right leg. I want this to be as light as possible because then it will be more pliable. Now, I just have to get over this elbow. I don't have to get over the hand. So I'm going to make a C-post into the elbow and place set that momentarily so he can't widen his elbow up to the ceiling. Once I can do that, this part's really important. I take my hand to the far side of the trap and pull him upwards as I throw my right leg over the top. Once I get to this position, all I want to do is start to thread my right knee down to the floor, and then I can start to put my left knee on the other side of his face. Now, we're not going to go for the triangle. It's just the mounted triangle setup. I'll give you two options. It's obvious that you could just unweight your right foot and then start to triangle in here. But this armbar is actually really cool and really high percentage. We haven't even figured out a defense for it yet. So if you can hit this on people, they're going to be fucked. You take your left hand, or the hand that's at the head, and you're going to start to snake it in underneath, pulling his thumb into your lat and grabbing up on your left hamstring. Now be very careful when you do this. It's an extremely tight lat juji, and these are the most tight arm bars that you can get. But when you get into this position, what you're going to start to do, is bring your left foot up. Yeah, he's already tapping. Bring your left foot up as high as possible, and you're gonna drive your knee in that same direction, and then you're gonna pinch your elbow towards your lat, wedging his thumb in place, and the fulcrum of where his elbow is completely extended at this moment. So as I start to inch my hip forwards, it's a tiny, tiny, tiny amount of pressure until he starts to tap. If Josh tries to rotate his thumb at all here, he can't. If he tries to bridge me off, I'm nowhere near his hips. If he takes me over this direction, I'll end up in a belly down variation, which is even more devastating. If he tries to take me backwards, he can't because I'm not over that direction. So if you guys figure out a defense for this, please let me know. We have no fucking idea how that's gonna happen, but this is extremely tight and it's a very, very useful attack from now, especially when you can get to that mounted triangle position. Where are you going? Put your elbow back there. He already wants me to use it on someone else. So we're in our katagatame position. We switch our hands underneath. We start to go over this direction, but he does a good job at cross hip posting us down the bottom. Yeah, sometimes this really fucks with your ability to start to go over this direction. No problem. We're gonna start to seat post this. Take our left knee and elbow up at the very top of his head and connect them together. My hand comes off his shoulder up towards the far side of his neck as I thread my right leg over and through. Now you can't be lazy with this. You have to get this down towards the floor. So I'm going to lift his head up as I start to put my right knee down to the floor here. Obviously, I can always forehead post, unweight my right leg, sorry, and then go into mounted triangles, which are also very good. This armbar variation is very devastating. I recommend you start to get good at it. So you're going to snake in underneath, pinching the lat and your tricep so that his thumb is in the perfect position for the elbow to start to be broken. You're going to take your left knee up towards your face and you're going to slowly, slowly, slowly hip in and get a very devastating armbar. Let's give that a go, then we'll do some Q&A and we'll do some roundup.